growers. And the farmer he can be our customer if he or she's purchasing fertilizer or other products, but they're also our suppliers. And we pride ourselves on close relationships with the farmer growers. So what are some of the things we're doing? We're working with the farmer growers to help them become more sustainable, working through programs like Field to Market. We're helping them reduce the agricultural footprint of their farming practices while ensuring that the farmer can still make a fair living on his land. Because we have to remember, the farmers, this is how they're supporting their families. This is their job, so to speak. We encourage their activity with specialty products, the organics, the non-GMO. We purchase those products and help find a home for them with a company that's willing to pay. We do provide identity preservation and single source supply when required out of certain, so let's say a company says, you know, we need to make sure this product is non-GMO. We want to take it from only a certain traceable number of farms. You know, we just don't want to take it out of an elevator generally. We have the ability to do that. Ag recycling. This is a really cool part. You know, when we talk about plant nutrition, it's not just fertilizer. We actually take waste corn cobs, not just corn cobs that come into us, but corn cobs from farms, from other businesses, and we make them into products like kitty litter and animal bedding. So there is so much that can be done with what would otherwise be just a waste. We are very involved in 4R nutrient stewardship. I think we all know the problems with Lake Erie with runoff from fertilizer, so we do a lot of work with our farmers in terms of right source of nutrients, right rate, right time, and in the right place. I think the days when a farmer just spread fertilizer across an entire field are over. Farmers now have the ability literally on their cell phone to see, you know, how is my acreage, what does my acreage need? Does it need the NPK, the traditional fertilizer? Does it need something else? Does it need more or less? We've got some product innovation too, some products that don't use the traditional NPK, but hopefully also will allow farmers to grow, you know, a good yield and a bountiful crop. Then we do participate. There are various ag industry-based certifications. Responsible Ag is one where a number of our facilities are certified, and this kind of covers the gamut of regulatory compliance, health, safety, you know, environmental rules. So it's, once again, this is part of the journey that started a while ago but hadn't been pulled together. Always also important to serve our 2,400 employees. And I say this not with my HR hat on, but just with a human hat on, because our people are what makes us such a great company. The Statement of Principles, which is, you know, a document that was created by the original Andersons family, 75 years old. It really talks about who we are, what our ethics are, what our beliefs are. You can find that on our website. It sets forth really our beliefs and our stakeholders. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DE&I, is something that I've been really excited about. The year before coming here, I was actually certified as a certified in diversity and inclusion. So we've really increased our emphasis on DE&I in our recruiting and our outreach. You know, let's make sure we're reaching out to different groups of people so that we can increase the representation within our workforce. We've conducted unconscious bias training for all of our managers so that people can understand, you know, why things might matter to someone who's different or who doesn't look exactly like you. We've launched this year a number of ERGs, employee resource groups, as Doug mentioned, an LGBTQ plus one, military and veterans, working parents, and impactful professionals, which was actually originally our young professionals group, but they didn't want to limit themselves to being young, and so they're now impactful professionals. We developed within the last year some customized training because of our 2,400 employees, the majority work in our operations. The majority are hourly employees. So the face of the company is the supervisor. It's the manager. And those folks need to be trained to manage. You know, you don't just wake up one day and say, hey, I'm a manager, look at me. You need to learn that. So we've done that. We've also developed customized training journeys for each employee, a new hire, to help them learn the company, learn their job, learn how things work. And we do an engagement survey every 2 years. The question to employees is, what can we do better? How can we improve? Lastly, serving our communities. I think that's the Andersons legacy most of you already know about. This is our 75th anniversary this year. We celebrated that with 75 acts of service. So every location, everywhere, U.S., abroad, was asked to do at least one act of service. We did many, many here in Maumee. And I'm just going to give you a quick little video highlighting our community activity.
The Andersons and its employees have a long legacy of supporting our communities with time, talent, and treasure. The community is one of our 4 stakeholders mentioned in our mission statement and further detailed in our statement of principles.
We are continuing a legacy that dates back to the very beginning, 75 years ago. Harold and Margaret Anderson believed in giving back. It's one of our stakeholders in the Statement of Principles. Very much a part of who we are as a company. It's a part of our culture, is to help support our communities.
To speak with you tonight.
Thank you very much, Christine. So let me just do a moderator prerogative just to make sure we're picking up some of the great things and the themes that we talked about. Both have done a really nice job of, again, balancing the environmental sustainability and the economic, right? That very much is part of their decisions every day, probably, and every year. We heard Dana talking about having very sustainable products, right? Electric vehicles. That's just great for the future. We also heard Dana focus on operations and particularly the reduction of greenhouse gases. And I think that's a theme for many of us. Christina also focused on products, right? That's part of what they're doing. And some, the idea, I did not know the corn cobs turning waste into products. And that's a neat thing too. Also focused on greenhouse gases and as well as waste and pollution. So lots of great things here. Now we're going to hear from our third and last speaker. I'm looking forward to Randy, and I'll introduce him in just a second. But, the idea of looking upstream and downstream, not just operations. And I think that's going to be really interesting. And if you give me just a second, I left his bio right over here. I spent time reading, but I didn't memorize it. Sorry, Randy. So Randolph Burns is Vice President, Chief Sustainability and Corporate Affairs Officer. He leads OI Sustainability and Social Responsibility, Government and Public Affairs Strategy. His team is focused on advocating glass packaging and elevating the sustainability profile of OI and its products. OI is one of the leading producers of glass bottles and jars around the globe. Led by their diverse team of approximately 24,000 people across 70 plants in 19 countries, OI achieved revenues of $6.4 billion in 2021. Recognizing the tremendous benefits of glass, the United Nations has designated 2022 as the International Year of Glass to celebrate the past, present, and future of this transformative material. I'm not sure how many people have been involved with that celebration, but it's been a good one all year. Headquartered in Perrysburg, Ohio, OI is the preferred partner for many of the world's leading food and beverage brands. Randy was appointed to this role in May of 2020. Previously, he served as the Vice President of Global Government Affairs and held senior roles in the legal department. Before joining OI as an employee in 2017, Burns served OI as outside counsel for 20 years and has more than 25 years of experience working at the intersection of advocacy, law, and policy. Welcome, Randy.
Well, Well, thank you very much, Dean Toole. Thank you for the Metro Parks. And thank all of you for being here. The last time I saw this many people show up to hear three lawyers talk was when I received a jury summons. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about sustainability at OI. What I want to do is look at some examples about how we put it into play, as opposed to talk about sort of some of the things that we've accomplished. And I want to end with a short video. And if I've done my job right, I'll leave you with a few provocative questions maybe that you hadn't thought about, and also maybe make you think about what role each of you could play in your organizations in the sustainability ecosystems that you encounter. So sustainability ecosystems, Randy, that sounds like a fancy term. What do you mean? By now, after listening to us, you've probably realized, if you hadn't thought about it already, sustainability is not just about one thing. It's about an interconnected ecosystem that when it works together, the byproducts of which are all of the things that we want to achieve from sustainability. And that's because the definition of sustainability, as Dean Toole led off with, is really about balance. It's balancing the needs of our organization with the competing needs of other people, other businesses, our collective prosperity, and the planet. All right, so how does that happen? It comes from building strong, resilient organizations that are built to last for a long time, something we want more of in the future, not less. And we do that by organizing ourselves to use less raw materials, use more of what exists, reduce the byproducts that are negative, and at the same time cause benefit to the community, people, and organizations that empower our businesses and organizations to thrive. So we do that, by the way, by doing two things. One of them is not standing still, right? It's through the use of innovation and transformation, because that's how we bring about the change that's necessary to move us forward in these areas. So let's take a quick look maybe about how this plays out for OI. So we make glass, right, as Dean Toole said, we make bottles and jars. Most of you know that. You know, glass is inert. It doesn't have any leaching into food products. It doesn't harm you, it doesn't harm the planet, it doesn't harm the oceans. And if you don't recycle it, we don't encourage that, by the way, but if you don't recycle it, Mother Nature will, which is different from what happens to lots of other things if you throw them away. All right, so with those credentials, you would think, wow, glass is sustainable, right? Is it sustainable forever? Does that in and of itself make glass sustainable? Well, maybe not, right? Maybe not. You got to be a sustainable maker of something, which means that the ecosystems that you're dealing with, the nature of your relationships with your communities and your people, the nature of your relationships with your processes and other things are actually sustainable too, right? So you have to be a sustainable maker in order to make sustainable products, right? And so what happens is you find little ecosystems that require innovation and transformation for you to make those changes. What things do we need to do in our process? What things do we need to do in our relationship? That's the genesis of our sustainability goals and our roadmap. That's where we know. That's how we know where we should go work, right? So over the next hour and a half, I'll walk through each one of these in detail. But instead of doing that, what I'd like to do is use the example, as I said. We'll take greenhouse gases, recycling, and social impact, and I'll just walk you through a little bit about how this works when we think about doing sustainability at OI. How's that? Ready? Yeah. All right, so glass has 4 basic ingredients: sand, soda ash, limestone, and recycled glass. Anybody have any idea which is the primary ingredient, the one we use the most? Any guesses? Well, it's probably recycled content, right? I just had to check to see if you're awake. I'm the third speaker here, but 38% of our batch is recycled content globally on average, right? Okay. That's important because the more recycled content we use, the fewer GHG emissions we have. Why? Because it takes less energy to melt glass than it does to melt the original ingredients, among other things, right? Now think about this. Our ability to use more recycled glass, and we could use more than this. In some of our plants in Europe, we use 80% recycled glass. But in order to do that, we need recycled glass. And how do we get recycled glass? Well, a community has to offer it to their citizens, and guess what? You have to then recycle it, you being, the folks that are using consumer products every day. Okay, so that maybe poses some challenges, right? So if you look around the world, the recycling rates differ wildly, right? They differ wildly. But what this illustrates is there's some places that need a little bit of innovation and some transformation about how they approach recycling in general. So what does that mean? Well, it means maybe you need to put in some infrastructure. It means maybe you need some education, but it also means maybe that we need to look at how we could develop a process that allows us to use a dirtier stream of recycled glass, because maybe that's all that's available in a developing country. So when the ecosystems function together the right way, they do in Europe pretty well, you can see that it lowers our greenhouse gas emissions, diverts waste for the community, and brings things into a more circular system, right? The ecosystems are all working together in a way that brings about just the things that we're looking to do, right? Okay. So let's maybe look at the US a little bit. All right, so a little bit different dispersion, but same problems. You can see the recycling rates in a lot of places in the US are kind of challenging, right? So they're kind of challenging. So what that says to us is if we want more recycled glass, if we want to lower our GHG emissions, and if we want to do some other things in the community, we probably have to figure out how to do that. And everybody knows, that's a tall order for more than a community, right? It takes more than one company to change how you recycle things, right? We can't even figure out how to do recycled glass in Perrysburg, for example. Well, that's another discussion, okay? That's another discussion. All right, so what might we do when we see these situations? Well, there's a couple things we could do. There are a couple things. One, if we have a plant in a remote location where the community just doesn't have glass recycling, we can go to them and we can offer to partner with them. Hey, we'll supply some glass recycling receptacles all around, right? You help us promote it. How's that, right? And then we'll figure out how to use it in our plant one way or another. And maybe, if you give us enough glass, we can weigh it and then donate to charity in the community to help give back and create an ecosystem that's self-sustaining for us there in the community, right? So that's one way. Another way, let's pick another group of people who we interact with, our customers, right? So our customers break bottles when they're trying to fill them sometimes. So they have waste. So maybe we could get them to just return the bottles straight to our plant, right? So if we did that, they've got a good story because they're not throwing stuff away. They don't have to pay for it. The logistics involved in that are all minimized, and we're returning a circular material back right into the process, okay? And there's another way. There are many others, but I'll just stop with three, right? So we could own part of the recycling system. We could try to go out and really create the infrastructure. So that little dot up there in Oregon, we have a version of that going up there. Oregon's got a great collection system for beverage containers, and OI owns the only glass cleaning plant in Oregon. So all the glass collected through the deposit system in the state of Oregon comes to our facility, we clean it, and we use it in our plants in Oregon, Washington, and surrounding areas, right? If you think about just those impacts that I told you, what's necessary to make those things run, right? So when we do it right, there's jobs created, waste diverted, byproducts minimized, using more of what already exists, and using less raw materials, right? So all the things come together the right way, and if you think, wow, if you could spread that out, you're really making a social impact and other things, right? And we can talk about DE&I efforts to create jobs in these areas and other things. There's lots of impacts, but we'll just keep it narrow here. So the bottom line, I think, before I conclude and show you our video, which I hope you like, is that it takes a mutual understanding that sustainability is about multiple things working together. And it really is a self-sustaining thing once you get it going. And with that mutual understanding, in which some of the things that we've talked about tonight, maybe you could think about that and raise it a conversation at home, right? Or at work, to think about how we can move things forward. So just leave you with a couple things, right? Sustainability is not about one thing, interconnected ecosystems, and it's about innovating and transforming things to make the ecosystems work well to produce the sustainability outcomes we want, right? So with that.
A sustainable world requires innovation and transformation of processes, products, and collaborative relationships. At OI, innovation is in our DNA. We're transforming how glass is made and sold by advancing energy-efficient melting, enhancing best-in-class manufacturing systems, increasing recycled content, and reducing natural resource use. We're building transformative recycling ecosystems, maximizing the innate circularity of glass. We're strengthening our interconnected relationships with our suppliers, our customers, and our communities, and empowering our global workforce. That's how we're achieving balance together by transforming what we do.
Good stuff. So now it's a time for questions. So I think we're going to start. Did you maybe write some down? Hopefully you did. Who's collecting them? I see a couple, right? So if you got a question, stick up your hand. But if you don't mind, I'm going to start with a couple questions, thinking about it while they're coming in. So remember that we started at the beginning, the triad: environmental sustainability, economic viability, sustainability, social equity. I heard you talk about it, but get a little bit more specific about the tie between sustainability, environmental sustainability, and social equity or diversity and inclusion. Any specific things in your company that you didn't already mention quickly in your presentations? Go into a little detail.
I don't know that I've got anything extra to mention, but sustainability is a very broad umbrella. A lot of people go immediately to the E, to the environmental metrics, but sustainability was originally called like corporate responsibility or corporate citizenship, and then it evolved to sustainability, and then it became ES&G, environmental, social, and governance. But all of the, while climate change is critical and those E metrics are critical, really when you're talking sustainability, it's all critical. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's one of the major social issues facing our nation right now and facing many other countries. A lot of these, how you treat your employees, once again, critical for our company, for our countries, and for our communities. So I think you can't underemphasize the E, but you also shouldn't overemphasize the E.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah, I agree. And as I mentioned, we really take that holistic approach, and we intentionally, call out not just sustainability but social responsibility. We want to be very focused and intentional on those aspects as well. And if you look at any great organization, right? It's an organization that really is doing things the right way. And certainly sustainability the environmental sustainability is critical, but so is the way you treat your people. So is the way you treat your community. So is the way you make sure you are focused on inclusion, diversity, equity. You mentioned the unconscious bias training. That's something that we've done extensively as well. All of those things are really, really important to have the right kind of culture, the right approach, and I don't think you can separate them. You really can't.
I would just add that I view all of these as self-nurturing ecosystems, as I mentioned, right? It's probably not a surprise at this point, but if we treat anything like a single-use behavior, whether it's natural ingredients or people, right? Because you could just work people to death and go on to the next group. That is not sustainable under any definition, right? If you pollute the river, injure your employees, alienate your community, and go through your people, okay, that's not a sustainable business model, even if you make solar panels or glass or electric motors. And in order to create that ecosystem, if you expect people to return to your business and you expect to attract people into your business, you'd better create a situation in which you are nurturing that ecosystem. And there's no better way to do that than making sure that you have a place of employment that is diverse, inclusive, and provides equitable treatment to everybody. And I would say that you practice the same kind of things as you interact with your community, right? Otherwise, we're not going to get to where we need to get when it comes to balancing competing needs, of our organization with others.
So let's see if we can get a little provocative with this one, and if you got any details, that would be great. So you kind of say, it's the right thing to do. We've been hearing that a little bit, but what specifically is driving your sustainabilities? And I'm wondering, how often is it the government? How often is it your customers? Is it your employees, shareholders, or somebody else? So which of those say, number one or number two, or?
Well, I don't know how I would power rank them off the top of my head, but I will tell you the answer is yes to all of the above.
I knew that what you were going to say.
We all know increasingly the governments around the world, and for good reason, are stepping up with regulations. We know that that's the case, and I think that's actually good. Certainly employees, all things being equal, right? All of us, right? If you had your choice to go work for 3 different companies, right? job's the same, pays the same, benefits are the same, but one of the companies is doing business the right way, is focused on all the things we've been talking about. Where do you want to work, and where do you want to, where do you want to stay? So certainly it's important to employees, investors. It goes without saying. I won't bore everybody with details on what all the new requirements are from investors, but rest assured, people have a choice of where to put their money. And there's lots of great companies, but again, you want to invest with companies that you believe are doing business the right way. And what was the other one that you mentioned? Customers. Customers. In our industry, and this is not an exaggeration, if you want to have a seat at the table to bid on new business, certainly they're going to sit down and say, tell me about your price, your quality, your delivery terms. But I guarantee you, if you're not stepping up with the right story on what's your culture, what are your sustainability and social responsibility priorities, you're not going to even be bidding on new business. There's that much focus in the mobility industry.
And I guess I'll break it down a little bit more. None of this would be important, none of this would be happening if it wasn't for people like each of you. Ultimately, it's individual people driving this, individual people saying, I want to purchase a product that's sustainably made. I want to patronize a company that's reducing its greenhouse gas emissions, it's not destroying the environment. I want to invest my money or my retirement fund in a company that's making the world a better place. I want to work for a company that's making the world a better place. So at the end of the day, all of this is driven by each and every one of you and the millions of people just like you.
Sure, we're all lawyers, so we could talk for a long time. But I'll just maybe if you like one small thing, right? For us, there's a couple of things that are unique. Our employee base is really active here, right? They come to work for us because of what we make, and they believe in what we make, and they want to make products that they believe we want more of in the future. Some of them have come from competing packaging industries because of that, right? So that's one for us. Our customers obviously are another big driver because you consume the products of our customers every day. And I would just circle right back to what Christine just said a second ago. If it wasn't for people asking for that, creating the demand, the pressure wouldn't be where it is, right? And the pressure's good. It's good pressure, right? That's, if we're all staying where we are, we're never going to move forward. So we embrace the pressure. We like it.
Let's probe a little further on the balancing that financial viability and the environmental. So for those of we take in finance class, we remember, right, that we calculate net present value, or maybe we do a rate of return. Do you have different rates of returns if it's a good environmental project versus bad? How do you factor in the environment in your ROI analysis?
A good project has to be a good project. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to put a project in where there's no linkage to their business and there's no business benefit. But the reality is a sustainable project, a low-cost project, a low-input project, a project that's not emitting a lot of waste, which you then have to pay to dispose of, those are going to be the better projects. That's, kind of part of your analysis when you're looking at the overall cost of your project and your rate of return.
Yeah, I would agree with that. A lot of, what we're focused on when we talk about sustainability is operating more efficiently, which reduces costs, number one. So it's not an either or. You can do business the right way, or your costs are going to be higher. It's usually you can do both, and it's a win-win. I would also say in our case, this is more specific to Dana, but as vehicles transition from internal combustion engines to e-propulsion, our content on the vehicles goes up like threefold or more. So there's actually
Win-win.
a very strong business case for us. But I also mention again, there's the opportunity cost. I don't care what industry you're in. If you are not, leading in these areas, you're going to miss out on opportunities to get new business, whether it's from customers like everybody in this room, or in our case, we're more of a B2B where we sell to other businesses. You're just not going to get the new business.
And I would say this is one of the hardest challenges that corporations face because Business schools today in contemporary economics focus on, shareholder value, and that's what the regulatory schemes in the United States actually cause directors to focus on. And so there's always a trade-off, even when you're thinking about that, between long and short-term outcomes. Everything that we're discussing today is a long-term outcome, right? And so figuring out how to create a process in your organization that solves for these outcomes is something that every company in America has to learn how to do. In fact, everybody internationally. And so figuring out how to either grow value or capture it based on where you position this in your corporate strategy or corporate responsibility, depending on how you view it, is something that we all have to address. I would say there's probably some that are better at it than others. We're all of us, I think, just express that we're learning how to do it, but it's something that we have to figure out. And it's, again, that's why the pressure is good, right? Because it'll cause us to do it faster than we would if we had to think about it for a long time. So.
Great. To take a questions here, but one more just before we get started. You showed me a LEED building, right, Dana? Remember, LEED is Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. This is probably, I'm pretty sure it's LEED. I'm sure we're in something, there's a certificate. So is there any other credentials or sustainability metric systems that is in your industry that is part of when you're building a new furnace, glass furnace or something, or some other projects that you say, I want to achieve this because it will get this rating that our industry knows or our customer knows? The answer might be no, I don't know, but I'm asking that.
Are you referring specifically to like building a new facility?
For your facility or even the operations, is there levels of metrics, kind of a holistic, or in the case of LEED, it's point by point?
There are any number of metrics and reporting frameworks. You know, we've got, on the one hand, you've got like shareholder advisory services like ISS that rate companies on a scale of 1 to 10 in environmental, social, and governance, with 1 being the top score. I'm proud to say right now Dana's got 1s across the board. There's all different, depending on what country you're in, there's different certifications you're required to achieve to operate to certain standards, and depending on which customer you're working with, you have to demonstrate that you've met those standards. So there's frankly dozens and dozens of different reporting frameworks depending on the type of facility, what country you're in, but increasingly they are a big area of focus is on sustainability for sure.
For that metrics, okay. So here's a tough one to see how much you're looking around, because you're all focused on your own companies, that's good, but I like this question. Outside of your companies, your own company's initiatives, what initiatives regarding sustainability in Toledo are you most excited about?
Well, I'll go first. I am so excited about this Metro Park that we're in right now. That is it is gonna transform downtown. We are gonna add, hundreds of acres of clean, healthy, space. And when you think about sustainability, that holistic approach, obviously it's gonna help the environment. It's gonna help the watershed. But think of what it's gonna do in terms of the other aspects of sustainability and social responsibility we talked about. And I'm not just saying that because I'm here. I am really, really thrilled about this project.
Well, I guess I'm going to do a plug for the Toledo-Lucas County Port Authority. One of the things that really impressed me, they were giving me a little tour of the facilities, and there's that old Jeep manufacturing site. That site had environmental contamination. No corporate would have touched that because the liability, the costs would have been too high. And the Port Authority was able to come in, clean up the site, redevelopment. There are now a number of tenants sitting out there, and there are just a lot of activities like that the Port Authority is working on to, return property to productive use, to improve the economic development within Toledo. And maybe that doesn't sound like ESG or sustainability, but bringing property back into use, into productive use, is good for our community and good for all of us.
So maybe I have a little bit more of a geeky answer about this, right? And we didn't collaborate on this, but so there's a group forming here that's based in Toledo that's seeking to bring a hydrogen hub here that's going to electrolyze. It's going to create hydrogen potentially from the nuclear power plant down the street or another green source of electricity, which is what you need to make green hydrogen. Making green hydrogen is the key to substituting fossil fuels in industrial applications like ours or the NSG plant or others like it. And so the idea that in a smallish city in the Midwest, that we've got a group of people coming together that might pull a bunch of federal funding into really what would be a kind of a cutting edge thing is really exciting. So I know it's, it's not as, it's low geekish, I'll just say.
That's good. And that brings up another question. So being we're at the Glass City Metro Park, can you talk a little bit about the role that organizations like the Metro Parks and other organizations play in protecting our environment and sustaining our natural resources? So who else are the part of those partnerships, part of that ecosystem in Toledo?
You know, the Metro Parks are, as someone who's not from here, who didn't grow up here, I think you need to be so grateful for what you have. You know, I'm from Chicago. We have a lot of green space. Much of it's not safe. Much of it's not usable. And here you have these phenomenal parks that are safe, that are usable. I'm in a Metro Park at least once a week doing something. And the beauty of that, if you get back to, you know, my comment earlier about ESG is about individuals, and it's about individual people expressing demands and expressing their preferences. When people can get close to nature, they see that, and they express those demands and those desires, and they develop really that bond with our planet that really drives the whole ESG movement, initiative.
Remind us what ESG, that's one of the questions.
Environmental, social, and governance. Once again, it started as corporate social responsibility, corporate citizenship. It evolved into sustainability. It then became environmental, social, and governance. So you'll generally hear it referred to as ESG now.
Great. So first of all, Randy, you've done a great job of picking people's interest about glass. They have lots of detailed questions about glass in this area. But we're gonna let you talk to Randy afterwards over a cookie or charcuterie stuff. But here's a good question, I think, to end with, and be really, really candid here, folks. What are your 3 biggest challenges for what we're talking about? Roll up the sleeves and let us have it with what's really going on there.
For me, once again, a new program, a new journey. It's internal resources. You know, it's people, it's systems. I mean, we have 120 locations. How do we track the electricity usage from each and every location? How do we centralize that? And I'm going to give you just 2, but the second one is working with our farmer growers, because if a farmer, for example, could sequester carbon if he left a certain portion of his field and he didn't till it and he sequestered the carbon in the ground. But how's he getting paid for that? And that's a critical issue, because, you know, we have consumer processed good companies, the big food companies that you all know, and they come to us and they say, we need to, you know, we have these ESG goals and targets, we need you to meet them, now go pass that on to your supplier. So we're gonna go to a farmer and tell her, hey farmer, we're not gonna compensate you, but you have to change your farming practices. So that is really a challenge. It's something we're working with farmers to ensure that, you know, the farmer is compensated, that she sees value in this, and that it's easy for her to do the things that are climate positive. But those would be my 2 biggies.
Yeah. 3 for us is, 1, organizing the company to solve for these outcomes on a regular and continuous basis. Right, this is something everybody has to learn how to do. We're wired to solve for profit, basically now, every company in America is. And so wiring to solve for not just the E part of this, but the rest of it is a serious challenge, right? Second is technology and innovation. For us, we really have to reinvent how you make this product. It's been made the same way essentially for 100 years, and we really need substitute fuels and some other things for affordable green electricity to really make progress here. And then the last one would be resources, right? Everything that I just told you there is expensive, right? And so there's no way if we increase the price of our containers by 50% tomorrow to every customer to try to compensate for this, that you all would accept that, right? You're not gonna pay double the price of what you pay for a 6-pack of anything. So those are the three challenges, and I think, you know, the combination of them, you know, when you try to tackle them all at once, makes it seem like a pretty big, you know, it's pretty tough knot to unwind, right? So.
Those are all great, and certainly I see a lot of overlap. One additional one that I'll call out. So there's when we talk about greenhouse gas emissions, there's scope 1, there's scope 2, and scope 3. Scope 1 are the emissions from fuels that you burn on your property. So think natural gas, diesel, if you're using gasoline, propane, whatever it is. Scope 2 are the emissions that are generated from purchased electricity. So they're generated at the plants that produce the power that come to your facility. Scope 3 is everything else. And by everything else, it includes the supply chain. So all of everything, and you talked about it with farming. So if you think about all the parts that go into any kind of a vehicle, right? First they have to be mined, then they have to be transported, then they have to, in some cases, melted, stamped, formed, whatever. Every step in that process, including the transportation, that's part of your supply chain is part of your scope 3, okay? That is very, very, very difficult to accurately measure and capture. So one of the challenges every company has right now is how are we going to do that? And one of the ways we're going to do it is more and more companies step up. They make commitments to disclose their emissions, to track their emissions, so that we're all using common terminology, common reporting, common calculations. And you know, it's going to be a process. And you know, if you think about a supply chain for a company like Dana, we've got thousands of suppliers. Some of them are large companies, very sophisticated. They've got the bandwidth and the teams to do it. But we also have a lot of smaller suppliers. So some of it is just, for all of us, it's the nature of the supply chain, how diverse it is, how international it is, how fragmented it is. So I think that is going to be a real, you know, ongoing area of focus for everybody is how do we get everybody on the same page, if you will, tracking that data. Because if you look at any company, scope 3 is the biggest part of your emissions, because it includes so many other participants in the supply chain.
Very good. I'm just thinking about the words, the idea of innovation, as you said, but predictability, resiliency too. Mm-hmm. It's just a very complex now with our world. So thank you for sharing this. Before I bring, Allie's going to come up and say what wonderful panelists we had, but talk about word class. Allie here and her team have been amazing to work with. So the panelists, and I want to thank you for all the wonderful things you did.
Thank you, Dean Toole, and thank you to our wonderful panelists. I've learned so much over the last couple of weeks working with you all, and I really appreciate you sharing it with our community tonight. And we all just know there's so much more work to be done, so thank you for what you're doing, and thank everyone here for what you are doing. We do try to, in these sessions, leave everyone with a couple little things that they can think about doing. So the first one is, if you had something to drink or eat tonight, make sure you use the compostable container over there, right? The one with the green. The second is, if you all have any campaign signs that were in your yard, there is a program through Keep Lucas County Beautiful that will take those and recycle those signs for you. We will be sending out an email with more information on that, as well as some other little tidbits that you can keep in mind in terms of how we can each individually contribute in small and big ways towards sustainability. So with that, I want to thank you all. Many of you have attended 1, 2, 3, or even all 4 of our sustainability series this year. So thank you so much for your support. Thank you, thank you. Yeah. And we're really excited because this is just the first year in a series that will come back again year after year. So look forward to new sessions, new topics in 2023. Share it with your friends, and together we hope we can make a really big difference. So thank you all very much, and thank you again to Dana for your support.